Hey everyone, welcome back to your Standing in the Gaps News Deep Dive. As always, I'm really excited for this one. We've got some interesting stuff to dig into today.
Yeah, this one's a doozy for sure.
It is, and especially for our listeners out there who consider themselves apolitical, not really aligned with the left or the right. You just want the facts. So today we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Trump White House's first week back in office. We're going to be looking at a press briefing that includes questions from both traditional journalists and new media personalities. So a really interesting mix of sources.
It feels like they're trying to shape the narrative from all sides right out of the gate.
For sure. And one thing that really struck me is just how much they're emphasizing all the action they've taken right off the bat. Executive orders, a whirlwind of activity.
Yeah, it's like a speed run almost. They're trying to create this sense of urgency and decisiveness. We're back, and we're here to get things done.
Exactly. And remember, they're facing a divided Congress. Taking unilateral action through executive orders allows them to bypass those potential roadblocks.
It's like cutting through the red tape. They want to show that they're not going to be bogged down by the usual political gridlock.
And they're definitely not shying away from bold statements. In fact, I wrote down this quote from the press secretary. President Trump is back, and the golden age of America has most definitely begun.
It's like a rallying cry to their base, a promise to restore some kind of idealized past.
Yeah, it's definitely a powerful message. And it really sets the tone for everything else that's to come.
And even if you don't buy into that whole golden age thing, it's still a pretty clear signal that they're going to do things their way, regardless of what anyone else thinks.
Now, one of the things you highlighted in your notes was the focus on immigration. And that's clearly a cornerstone issue for this administration.
Oh, absolutely. It's front and center in their messaging. And they're not mincing words either.
The press secretary went into detail about several specific deportation cases, painting a picture of what she called heinous individuals being removed from the country. She specifically mentioned a suspected terrorist, a convicted child sex offender, someone convicted of domestic violence, really trying to drive home that point that they're going after the bad guys.
And notice the language they're using, words like invasion, criminal repatriation. They're framing this as a matter of national security, a battle against a dangerous enemy.
It's definitely a loaded way of talking about it. And then there's the stance on birthright citizenship, which you specifically asked about.
Yeah, that's a big one. And it's already facing legal challenges.
What do you think this tells us about their overall approach to immigration?
It shows that they're willing to push the envelope, even if it means risking legal battles or accusations of violating constitutional rights.
So they're really doubling down on that hardline stance.
They're basically saying that being born in the United States is no longer a guarantee of citizenship, which is a huge shift.
And could have major implications for generations to come.
This is something we're going to be watching very closely.
There was also that interesting exchange about violent criminals versus illegal immigrants during the briefing. What did you make of that?
Seems like they're trying to blur the lines, making it seem like any violation of immigration law, no matter how minor, is just as serious as a violent crime.
Equating overstaying a visa with committing a violent offense.
Raises serious questions about due process and fairness.
And could lead to some pretty sweeping enforcement actions. All right, let's move on to the economy. The administration is tackling it from multiple angles, promising to address inflation, achieve energy independence, revitalize American manufacturing. They're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at it.
It's a multi-pronged approach, and they're trying to appeal to a wide range of voters with tax cuts, deregulation, infrastructure spending, all while claiming they'll balance the budget and reduce the national debt.
It sounds almost too good to be true.
That's the question, isn't it? How do they plan to achieve all of this? It's a lot of promises with not a lot of specifics on how they're going to make it happen.
One example they gave was this executive order for emergency price relief, which includes deregulation of certain industries and initiatives aimed at boosting domestic energy production. So basically, they're framing this as a way to remove obstacles to economic growth and ease the burden on working families.
Classic supply-side economic. Cut taxes, cut regulations, and let the free market work its magic.
But will it actually work that way?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Critics argue that these kinds of policies often end up benefiting the wealthy and corporations more than anyone else.
And that they don't really do much to address things like income inequality or protect the environment.
It's a trade-off, and it's not always clear who benefits the most in the long run.
Then there's the pause on federal grants and spending, which has caused a lot of confusion and concern. What's the rationale behind that?
They're calling it fiscal responsibility, making sure that every dollar spent is aligned with their priorities. But it also gives them a lot more control over the purse strings.
And allows them to target funding cuts to programs they oppose.
Exactly. Which could have a major impact on everything from education to environmental protection.
Speaking of economic concerns, we can't forget the egg shortage. The administration is using this as an opportunity to blame the previous administration, even linking it to the mass killing of chickens due to avian flu. So they're claiming it's all a result of failed policies and mismanagement, while offering their own solutions focused on deregulation and boosting domestic production.
It's a classic blame game. Take a complex issue and simplify it into a partisan talking point.
And it's a way to deflect criticism and reinforce the narrative that they're the ones who can fix it.
Exactly. It's all about controlling the narrative.
And before we move on, a quick reminder to our amazing listeners out there. If you're enjoying this deep dive, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment, and share it with your friends.
We love hearing from you guys.
And it helps us reach a wider audience.
Plus algorithms and all that.
If you really appreciate the work we do here at Standing in the Gaps, consider supporting our GoFundMe campaign.
Every little bit helps.
We're trying to upgrade our equipment, webcams, studio mics, editing computers, so we can bring you these deep dives in the best possible quality.
We're doing what we can with what we got, but some upgrades would be amazing.
All right, let's take a quick break and then we'll come back and talk more about the administration's foreign policy and their strategy for communicating directly with the American people.
Do you believe in standing strong for what's right? Do you value faith, freedom, and biblical truth in today's ever-changing world? Then we've got something special for you. Welcome to the Standing in the Gaps merch store, the official store of the Standing in the Gaps podcast, where we explore the social, economic, and political issues of today through a biblical lens. Here's what we've got for you. T-shirts that help you make a bold statement everywhere you go. Whether you're standing up for truth or sparking conversations, our shirts reflect the spirit of standing in the gap. Need fuel for those long, thoughtful mornings or deep dive discussions? We've got premium coffee, roasted to perfection, along with sturdy mugs designed to hold that truth-fueled brew. Want to represent your values wherever life takes you? Grab one of our stylish hats to keep you covered, literally and figuratively. And don't miss our inspirational prints that you can frame and hang up at home or in your office, a daily reminder to stand firm in faith. But that's not all. From accessories to gifts, we've got a variety of items that let you stand out while standing strong for what you believe in. Every purchase supports the mission of Standing in the Gaps, helping us continue bringing you insightful content, meaningful conversations, and the courage to face the tough topics. So what are you waiting for? Visit Standing in the Gaps merch store today. Link is in the description. Grab some gear, enjoy some great coffee, and help us keep bridging the gap in today's world. Together, let's stand for truth. Together, let's stand in the gap.
It's interesting, though, how they're trying to walk this line between appealing to their base and also trying to reach a broader audience.
Take the Iron Dome in Israel, for example. The announcement that the U.S. would build an Iron Dome for Israel sounds really impressive. But then you dig into the actual executive order and it's a lot more nuanced. Mostly calls for studies and report.
It's like they're trying to have it both ways. Signal strong support for Israel without actually committing to a specific course of action.
It's a way to appease their base while maintaining some flexibility in their foreign policy.
Exactly. And it seems like that's a recurring theme. Make a bold pronouncement, but leave the details to be worked out later.
Right. And when it comes to NATO, their support seems pretty conditional on other members increasing their defense spending.
That pay your fair share message has been a constant. It's a way to appeal to that sense of fairness, play into the narrative that America's been taken advantage of.
And then there's the reversal on the Houthis, redesignating them as a terrorist organization. You mentioned you were particularly interested in this, given your focus on the Middle East.
This is a big deal. It signals a much harder line against the Houthis and aligns with their broader approach to Iran and its proxies.
Potentially escalating tensions in the region.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
It seems like they're really trying to project an image of strength and decisiveness on the world stage.
Even if it means alienating allies or taking actions that could have unintended consequences.
They're not afraid to shake things up, that's for sure.
They're definitely not playing it safe.
Another key theme that emerged from this press briefing is their focus on appealing directly to the American people, often through non-traditional channels.
They're going around what they consider to be the hostile media establishment, taking their message straight to the public.
And they're using all sorts of tactics. Rallies, town halls, interviews on conservative outlets, direct communication through social media.
It's like they're running a perpetual campaign.
Always on the offensive, always trying to control the narrative.
And they're really good at it, framing issues in a way that resonates with their target audience, tapping into people's emotions and anxieties.
Like connecting their policies to everyday concerns. The cost of living, crime rates, border security, making it feel very personal and relatable.
Right, because when people are afraid, they're more likely to support policies that promise to protect them, even if those policies aren't actually effective.
It's a clever way to manipulate public opinion.
But it also raises concerns about misinformation. When you bypass traditional media outlets and fact-checking mechanisms, it creates a space where lies and distortions can flourish.
And that can be really dangerous, especially in today's hyper-polarized environment.
Absolutely. We need to be critical consumers of information, seek out diverse perspectives, and be wary of anyone who claims to have all the answers.
And speaking of controlling the narrative, they're also quick to dismiss any criticism as fake news or attacks from a biased media.
Delegitimize any dissenting voices. Solidify your support among those who already agree with you.
It's a dangerous trend. It erodes trust in institutions and it further polarizes society.
We need to be better than that. We need to be willing to engage with ideas that challenge our own beliefs.
And that's part of what we're trying to do here at Standing in the Gaps, providing you with the tools and information you need to navigate this complex and often confusing information landscape.
We're not here to tell you what to think. We're here to help you think for yourself.
And if you find this type of analysis valuable, please consider supporting our work. Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, share this episode with your friends.
We really appreciate your support.
And remember, we're completely listener-funded, so every little bit helps us keep the lights on.
And if you're feeling extra generous, consider donating to our GoFundMe campaign.
We're working hard to upgrade our equipment so we can improve the quality of our show and reach an even wider audience. The link is in the show notes. All right, let's move on and talk about some of the other key takeaways from this press briefing.
It's amazing how much they crammed into 1 week. We've seen executive orders, policy pronouncements, a whole lot of rhetoric, all aimed at setting a really assertive tone for this administration.
They came out swinging for sure.
It's clear that they're not afraid to push the boundaries, challenge the norms. Like that decision to freeze federal funding without much notice, that's a prime example.
What are the potential long-term implications of something like that?
It really highlights that tension between the executive and legislative branches. Congress appropriates funds, but the administration ultimately controls how they're spent. This move could set a precedent for future administrations to exert more control over spending, potentially even bypassing congressional oversight.
Their communication style has been raising some eyebrows. They're very good at crafting compelling narratives, even if it means stretching the truth or ignoring inconvenient facts.
They understand the power of storytelling, the power of emotion in shaping public opinion. They're masters of using hyperbole, making bold claims, even if they don't have the evidence to back it up.
Remember those statements about the egg shortage? They presented this complex issue with so many contributing factors as this simple case of mismanagement by the previous administration.
Classic blame shifting. And it seems to be working. It's resonating with their base.
But it raises concerns about accountability and transparency.
If they can deflect criticism and avoid scrutiny, it becomes really difficult to hold them accountable.
So what can we expect going forward? It seems like we're in for a wild ride.
I think that's a safe bet. They've made it clear that they're not interested in the status quo. They're willing to shake things up, even if it means making enemies along the way.
It's almost like they're operating from a different playbook, one that prioritizes disruption and bold pronouncements over consensus building and incremental change.
That's a really good way to put it, and it's a style that's going to be both exhilarating and unsettling for those who are used to a more traditional approach to governing.
Oh, it's certainly going to be interesting. And as always, we'll be here at Standing in the Gaps to help you make sense of it all. So before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to our podcast, leave us a comment, share this episode with your friends. We rely on your support to keep bringing you these deep dives. As we wrap up today, I just want to leave you with this thought. This administration is back, more determined than ever to reshape America according to their vision. How will their actions impact the political landscape and the lives of everyday Americans? Only time will tell, but one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating journey. Until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.